Starting now. G'day everybody, my name is Jimbo and I used to fly into Lukla. For those that don't know, Lukla is an airport in Nepal known as the gateway to Mount Everest. It's also garnered a reputation as being one of the most extreme and dangerous or deadly airports in the world. It's been on a number of TV shows where it has taken out the top spot. It is just over 9,000 feet up, so just below 3,000 meters, not far from Mount Everest, the largest mountain, tallest mountain in the world. The runway itself is about 500 meters long or 1,700 feet long. It is sealed and it's a one-way airstrip, so it's situated on a hillside, and you land on runway 06 and you take off on runway 24. That is regardless of the wind conditions. And I flew in Nepal for 2.5 years, and Lukla was one of the airports we flew into quite regularly, particularly during the busy season, which was when the trekkers were going up to either climb Mount Everest itself or base camp, which was where the majority of people have climbed. It's quite a bucket list item. And I was headhunted to go and fly there to teach the locals how to fly this particular aircraft, the PAC 750 XL or XSTOL as it's been called. And originally supposed to be there a couple of months, teach the locals, get out of there, but they were also short on pilots themselves, so that turned into 2.5, 3 years. I ended up being the chief pilot at one point and also became their senior check and training pilot. So any pilots coming up through the ranks, I would take them into Lukla and sign them off, so they were all cleared to go and go in and out of there as P1. We'll start off with pronunciation. It is pronounced Lukla. I know there's a few various shows out there that have called it Lukla, but if you want to win the locals over, call it Lukla. And same with the country, Nepal. It's a very phonetic language. Now I got the job because I was headhunted. The aircraft, as mentioned, the XL, was new to the country, a new type to the country, and at that stage, this was 2009 when I first started there, there weren't very many pilots experienced on this particular aircraft. I just happened to be one of them, and this outfit found out and got in touch with me. And I was at the time living in Queenstown, New Zealand, which was a great place to be when you're young, and I said no to them a couple of times, but they eventually reeled me in, and of course after seeing the YouTube videos of Lukla and seeing what it was about, was actually an easy decision in the end, and one I'm glad I took. So some challenges flying into Lukla itself. The obvious, it's in the mountains, the elevation just over 9,000 feet up. That in itself is very high, but you're also very low in the valley. And when you compare it to how close in proximity you are to Mount Everest, which is just below 30,000 feet. So that can put it in perspective for you. Even though you're actually up very high, you're still at the base of all the mountains there. The strip is quite a steep one. You know, it's a challenge to learn how to approach, to land and take off from an airstrip that is so steep. Because of the steepness, it has the effect of looking like you are coming in a lot or too high. High elevation, you're at 9,000 feet up when you're on the ground. So we need to cross the last pass, 12,500 feet, just as we enter into the valley of Lukla. Wind can play a huge part. They can change so much in the morning with the changes of the katabatic and anabatic winds. You can go from a headwind to a tailwind within the space of a few moments, and it can pick up during the monsoon season just so quickly. You've got to be very careful, very onto it, and very aware of the situation, the current climate, what's happening. You can be sure it's going to change. That's the easiest way. So plan for change. Cloud, same thing. Cloud can just boomfer, come in there while you're on approach, and it's something you don't want to be messing around with. There's videos out there of what can and does happen when you do get caught out. Same thing, you've just got to be on your game all the time. Density altitude is huge there. It can get very warm in summertime. You can be on approach at 10,000, 10,500 feet, yet your density altitude can be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet higher than that. Coupled with a tailwind on approach. While I was there, I think up to 14, 15 knot tailwind on landing was the maximum we'd go to. Now I believe that tailwind is a hard cut off for these stall strips. Once you hit 10 knots, regardless of the direction, the airport will close to fixed wing operations. So it's not uncommon to be on finals, and for us we'd have a indicated airspeed of around 85 knots, and at times we've had a ground speed of 110 knots, and that's all because of that density altitude coupled with the tailwind. With all of these things, there's such a small window of opportunity to get in and out of there, and that's why a lot of these videos you see is just jam-packed with planes. It's quite congested, heavily congested at peak times, and it's something that we need to keep in mind as we're going there, because while it is busy, if we are in rush hour, we've got 5 minutes on the ground. So we'll land, the aircraft will keep one engine running if you're in a twin. At times we've just kept the engine in feather while the ground staff will offload so we can get out of there quickly, because there's literally aircraft on their approach waiting to take your spot, so it's no mucking around. But even so, considering all of this, you would think there should be some pressure for us pilots to fly, and I can honestly say that pressure was not there. There's a very good attitude amongst the pilots that if it's no good, if you decide for whatever reason that you're not comfortable going there, you don't go there. You'll never get questioned, you'll never get asked why. Perhaps they might ask out of curiosity for their own record keeping, but there's just never any pressure to go anywhere, and I absolutely loved that. Not having that weight on your shoulders to get there and to move passengers, to move people, to move freight, cargo, what have you. It's just, it has such a huge positive impact on my time there, at least. Now let's get into some questions you guys have asked. I appreciate you asking and submitting all of these, by the way. Mike says, cracking video, Jimbo. Thank you, Mike. Do you need a special permit license to fly into Lukla, or is it open to any pilot? You need to be a local pilot to fly into Lukla, and you also need special clearance to land there as pilot in command. You'll go through a training phase, and before you even get there, all the pilots that do fly into Lukla have flown into Lukla as co-pilot, pilot monitoring for a couple of years at a bare minimum. So they've got, as a base standard, quite a strong knowledge of the airport itself. When you're getting upgraded or clearance to fly into there, you'll fly into other airstrips, stall fields before this one. The training itself is just to shoot, I believe, 10 approaches, or it may have been 5 approaches with an instructor check pilot. They'll go through everything which you already know beforehand as far as approach speeds, your specific points where you need to be at certain heights on the approach, your turning point, your decision point for go around, because you can go around. It is quite early in the approach though, and it is a fairly daunting missed approach because you're turning up valley, which is sort of against what you're mostly taught. Typically, if you need to go around and you're in a valley, you'd turn downwind or down valley. However, in this instance, because of the topography and the the cliffs and the hillsides that are there, there's more room to turn up valley and do a big 270-degree turn and then carry on. So once you do your specific number of landings, provided they're all suitable and within limitations, you'll get signed off and you'll be in there. For pilots wanting to do a one-off landing or something like that, it's very unheard of. I don't think it would ever happen. I mean, money talks. If you really wanted to, you could spend the money to go in as a training pilot and have someone like myself as a senior advisor. I don't know. Lalit, it's so old aircraft. New aircraft should be by. Yeah, Lalit, I think what you're getting at is they should buy new aircraft, and these aircraft are old. And in actual fact, Nepal is probably on the leading front of promoting new aircraft in the country. You cannot purchase an aircraft that is so old. From memory, I think it's got to be 10 years or younger. It might even be 5 years or younger if you're going to import an aircraft. Otherwise, buy new. And that's what we're seeing is companies buying new aircraft. And it's just brilliant. Quite unheard of. I don't know any other country that does that. Perhaps you're just misguided there, Lalit. These aircraft are new. The ones I was flying, the XL, they were brand new when I went there. And in fact, 1 or 2 more arrived after I started that came fresh off the factory. 420 Sesame Street. Are you a Kiwi? If so, you guys are at home in the mountains. Yes, I am a Kiwi. I'm from New Zealand. That is where this aircraft, the PAC 750, is made. And yeah, we do have a few hills around here. My day job now is an agricultural pilot. So I do top dressing and we land on airstrips, which I'd actually consider a lot more challenging than Lukla itself. So I guess you could say, yeah, we are at home in the mountains. I might have this name wrong here. Etienne. Apologies if I've got your name wrong. Lukla is nothing compared to crop dusting in New Zealand. Well, that ties in nicely with the last question. Yeah, I tend to agree in general as far as a challenge goes for flying. The airstrips we use here in New Zealand for top dressing are quite gnarly, a lot of them. Semi-prepared one-way airstrips, low-level flying the whole way. However, Lukla and flying in Nepal is something special. And to feel so insignificant in amongst these gigantic mountains is really a unique experience and special, and one I'm quite proud of, to be fair. Top Gear Dell. Couple of questions. Why does Lukla exist? Is it because it has proximity and view of Mount Everest? Why so much air traffic? Tourists? How did they get all the building material to that remote location to build the town like this? I think I might have touched on a few of these already. Top Gear Dell. Lukla exists mainly because of Mount Everest. It is the starting point to go on your trek if you want to go to base camp or summit Mount Everest itself. There's no road access. You can't drive there. An aircraft is really the only way, the only efficient and economical way to get there fast. It can take months to walk there, or if you're going to get a car to the nearest spot, I don't actually know how long. It could be weeks or days minimum to walk from the end of the nearest road to Lukla itself. But then you think about the equipment you need. If you're going trekking, it's a lot. It is a heck of a lot. It's so high up. You need so much. It's a necessary thing. There's no view of Mount Everest from Lukla itself. You need to travel further up the valley and around the corner to see it. And why so much air traffic? And that goes back to that small weather window. We can go days at a time without having access to Lukla because of weather. It can be cloudy and socked in for days and days and days. It can be fine in the morning, and by 10 o'clock it can be terrible. Torrential rain and just not fun at all. So when it's good enough, all the companies with the correct aircraft, so we've got the Dornier 228, got the Twin Otter the Let 410 and the Antonov or Y12, and I believe no longer are there single engine aircraft, but while I was there we had the XL, we had the Caravan, Cessna Caravan, and Pilatus Porter. How did they get the building material there? It was all flown in. The largest and heaviest stuff was brought in by a helicopter, Mil 8, and anything else was brought in the Twin Otters. We'd do a lot of cargo ourselves. Building material was quite a common thing. Corrugated iron and wood we'd take in, and at the same time we'd take out rubbish with us. Fernando, dude, fantastic stuff. Thank you, Fernando. You deserve a lot more subs. I particularly appreciate the Microsoft Paint annotations. That's some highly detailed stuff I do. I'm thinking about putting my application into Pixar, so you never know. And thanks for sharing video. It's one of the dangerous airport in Nepal, one of the most dangerous airports in Nepal. It's got that reputation, yes it does. I've flown into most of the STOL airfields in Nepal, not all of them though, and it is quite tricky because of everything mentioned. I think there are a few others in the country that are also quite challenging. Dolpa is one in the west, and Rara or Tulcha is another one. I may do a video on those approaches in the future. Keep an eye out for those. Peter, that was great. Thanks for sharing. I had the opportunity to ride in a PAC 750 in Miami, Florida a few years back. It was a skydiving operation and the pilot asked if I'd like to go up with him. What a thrill. Great short approach and STOL capabilities. Cheers. Thank you, Peter. Yes, the PAC 750 is used quite a bit on skydiving operations. I believe that was its original design to fly skydiving. Then of course moved into a lot of STOL field operations and has performed quite well in that role. We do use that aircraft for ag ops in New Zealand, top dressing. There's a modification done to that aircraft and same thing, it performs really well. I've done a couple of 100 hours in it myself and I really enjoy it. Eleanor, how do people earn a living there to pay for the beer and noodles? Well, trekking is and tourism in general is a huge money maker for the country, and I'd say that'd be their largest income money maker. But also it's the trekkers that are buying the beer and noodles. Mainly the trekkers. Marley, no, don't talk. Guitars. Looks like Jaws flying with Odd Job. Carson, hey Jimbo, do you live here in Nepal? Love the video. I finished full time in 2012 and I've gone back a few times since just to do some proficiency check flights and to fill in for a few months here and there. At one stage I believe I was the only other check pilot on the XL in Nepal, apart from the one person who was living there, but he needed someone to give him a check flight. So one time I did have to fly over there from New Zealand and arrive there and did an hour, or I think it was 2 hours check flight with this person and then flew straight home. So that was fun. Mike, nice flying. What is the ICOM used for at the bottom of the radio stack? That's the HF. That's what we use when we are out of VHF range, which is hardly ever, but we can dial that up at any stage and contact anyone anywhere in the country. So we can be on the far west and talk to Lukla Tower if we needed to. And it's also what those in the control towers or the little towers in these STOL fields, they communicate back to Central Command in Kathmandu. So any aircraft that departs or lands, that information gets relayed back to Kathmandu, so there's a full record of it, and no matter where we are, we should and are able to contact a ground station through the HF. But for the majority of the routes, the VHF works just fine. Ricardo, I did not see this question asked, so here it goes. At the beginning of the video, is that mountain covered in snow at the top of the video the Everest? Could be. This here is Mount Everest. You lose sight of it quite early in the approach. You're still 5 to 10 minutes away from the approach just because the valleys are so vast and huge. Looking at Mount Everest from around there is almost a disappointment because of all the other mountains that are closer. They look larger than what Everest is, and the peak of Mount Everest actually sits below the perspective of the other mountains there. But still amazing all the same. Pilots who land here are wizards. Also, I don't get what it means at 5:03 by flight service, so no clearances are given. How do you get landing permission and not crash into each other? That's a good question. So the Flight Information Service, they just provide information, but they cannot tell you what to do. They'll advise you of any aircraft coming into land or departing. So let's say when you're entering Lukla Valley and you contact the tower, you say where you are and that you're coming to land basically, and they'll come back with you with information on any aircraft that's departed, so you can use that information for your traffic avoidance and where you're going to track. And this is all there to help you formulate a plan in your mind and get that situational awareness to keep you and your aircraft and your passengers safe. Just before you land, the tower will confirm the runway is clear. So in my case, B9 Juliet Bravo, wind is 06005 knots, runway 06 is clear. And that'll be the clearance you'll get. So they're not telling you cleared to land like usual, it'll just tell you the runway is clear. And same thing once you're on the ground and you're getting your clearance to go back to Kathmandu or wherever, they'd advise you of any traffic incoming. So same thing, plan your departure appropriately, and before you taxi out they'll let you know if there's an aircraft on approach, where it is on approach, so you can decide whether or not you're going to taxi and line up and take off or hold and wait for that traffic. But overall it just works in so seamlessly. We're also talking to the other aircraft and coordinating our own separation. Hello, what are the options if your engine fails when flying through the valley or right after departure? Are there some feasible strips or open fields down below? Short answer is no, and no options after departure. There's a river down there. If something does go wrong, you do your best. Like anything else, fly the plane. Aviate, navigate, communicate. It's not good if things go wrong there. If you're high enough, you could glide to a few airstrips nearby. If you have engine issues, you can attempt to land at a few as well. I've landed this strip at least 50 times on X-Plane 11. Just curious, have you spent much time in Lukla? I've never stayed the night in Lukla, I don't think, not from memory. I've stayed there for a few hours at a time on the last flight. If the timing's right and there's no other aircraft coming, then I'll park up for a few hours, go and have a cup of tea and some lunch and chew the fat with a few other pilots and friends. Other than that, I probably haven't gone further than 100 yards from the apron. David, first time I've seen good quality front view landing and can say Lukla isn't for the faint of heart, but also the approach speed looks so much higher than 85 knots, although the speed indicator says it is. Whilst you make it down safely, it's hard for a non-pilot to understand and comprehend the aircraft's ability to stop in time. Thanks for the kind words, David. Yes, the speed, ground speed generally is a lot higher than the 85 knots. That density altitude can play a huge part in that. A lot of the times in the late morning or early afternoon when it's getting towards the end of us flying there, because of our small window opportunity, we can be doing 100, 110 knots ground speed on finals. It's something we need to be aware of, extremely aware of, definitely in the twins, but in the likes of the XL it's not such an issue. The performance of the aircraft is that good. The steepness of the strip is that steep that it slows you down well enough, even if you do have a few issues getting it on the ground, shall we say. And that is us. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will finish by saying I really did enjoy the few years living in Nepal. Beautiful country, lovely people, especially those genuine locals that that we had the opportunity of seeing. Really enjoyed my time there, and the flying was incredible. And would you like to see some more videos about Nepal? I've got a few other approaches I've shot into some other airstrips a bit further out west. If it's something you're keen to see, let me know down in the comments below. Otherwise, you guys have a good one. Hooroo!